Thanks for rejoining the end of session policy conference. I'm Mike Quaranta, I'm president of the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining us. We are joined today by the Senate President Pro Tem, David Sokola, and by the Speaker of the Delaware House of Representatives, Representative Pete Schwartzkopf. Let me kick off this conversation by identifying a couple of issues that well, I guess I'm gonna go to a couple policy priorities of the chamber, and I'd like to put those up. So Helena, if we could go ahead and move to the next slide, that's great. So here are some issues that we have been supportive of and remain supportive of. Senate Bill 127, which is a site readiness bill. It's important, I think, to have some resources set aside to help make additional sites ready for businesses that want to grow and expand, kind of get the utilities in place, get the DelDOT or DENREC, at least some of the engineering set up and ready to go. Elevate Delaware, as important as Forward Delaware. If we want to rebuild the middle class, we want to try to solve the mismatch between the skills that Delaware employees have and the needs of employers. Really think that programs like this are really tremendously helpful. The Student Excellence Equals Degree Act seed scholarships, we think, has been a big positive lift for a number of Delawareans around the state, and we certainly support that. As well as the focus on alternative skills training, the FAST Act. We think that that also really has a great way to help employees and by extension their employers. There will be a number of proposals that Representative Bush has in the queue relative to legislation supporting our Ready in 6 initiative that we've worked on with the Delaware Business Roundtable and also the other chambers around the state. And we look forward to some of that. Some things that we do have some concern with and things that we worry about are the minimum wage proposal, recreational marijuana. Marijuana, we're really want to make sure that employers have an opportunity to preserve the policies that they have, and that we go easy and we think about this one quite carefully. We're trying to get more people into places of employment, and we worry that there's some challenges with recreational marijuana. And then the Healthy Delaware Families Act, says paid family medical leave. We've shared with Senator McBride a number of our thoughts and comments about this bill. This is a complicated topic, albeit the approach she's provided is innovative and has some interesting aspects to it. There's a lot here that we need to wrap our heads around. This requires a lot of study. There are 57,000 licensed businesses in the state. 56,250 have fewer than 50 employees. Half of the state's workforce works for small businesses. And as everybody knows, the federal FMLA Act intentionally cut out businesses with 50 or fewer employees. And so this is something that a lot of companies have to kind of sift through the details on. Now, some companies have made adjustments to their leave policy over the decades since the FMLA has become law. And so at the chamber here, we've got members kind of all over the place with different policies relative to paid family and medical leave. So just require a little more study and thought and kind of sift through the details on that one in particular. So those are some of the policy priorities that are front and center for us. Let me now share the time with first the Senate President Pro Tem, who is a graduate of Mount Pleasant High School, has his degree in physical education from University of Delaware. David Sokola was first elected to the state Senate in 1990 and has been on the forefront of several different policy issues over the length of his career, notably making our education system better and better and better. We're also joined by the Speaker of the House, Pete Schwartzkopf, from down in the beach. We'll hear from Senator Sokola first, but when we get to Pete, he's a veteran of the Delaware State Police Department, also Wilmington College, and we look forward to his remarks. He's been a longtime speaker, and we appreciate his leadership in the House. So first with Senator Sokola. Senator, take it away.
Thank you very much, Mike, and good morning to everyone. Thank you all for asking me to speak at your end of session policy conference. I've been to a number of these over the years, but this is the first time I've had the pleasure of addressing you as the President Pro Tem of the Delaware State Senate. And it is my sincere hope that this is the last time I or anyone else will have to address you virtually. Never thought I'd say this, but I actually missed the Dover Downs Ballroom. The bad news is if it were there today, a number of you would probably still be stuck in traffic because there was a bit of a problem up north earlier today, and hopefully that's cleared up now. I don't need to tell you what a difficult time this has been for our state, our business community, and our neighbors. The state chamber is 184 years old this year, and I'm willing to bet no group of business leaders has ever faced quite the same challenges that you have endured and overcome since this pandemic began. Mike and his team at the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce deserve an incredible amount of credit for their leadership and their perseverance during these very difficult times. And each of you deserve a tremendous amount of credit for finding creative and innovative ways to hold on through the darkest days of this pandemic. I'm thrilled to tell you that after 15 long months, we are almost through this thing. There is more than just a light at the end of this tunnel. There is prosperity and growth, and millions of consumers eager to return to the life they left behind in March of 2020, as soon as they know it's safe. We always knew it would take some time and even some gentle nudging to restore their confidence. But thanks to our robust vaccination program here in Delaware, people are returning to work. They are finally returning to our restaurants, our beaches, and our tax-free retail shops. 3 out of 5 Delawareans 12 and older either are fully vaccinated or soon will be, just 6 months after the first shots became available. That's unprecedented and due in large part to many of you working with the Division of Public Health to make sure your workers had access to the vaccine. We've cut our unemployment rate by more than half from this time last year, and we're on pace to reach pre-pandemic levels by the fall. Thank you to legislation, and thanks to legislation we passed in January, your unemployment tax rate will not increase due to the high volume of claims filed in 2020. Delaware just had the strongest April housing market in more than 5 years. Consumer confidence and GDP projections are both up. Thanks to the American Rescue Plan, the U.S. economy is now set to grow at the fastest rate since 1984. And thanks to careful planning here in Dover, the state of Delaware will end the fiscal year with a surplus that will allow us to refill the reserves we spent down last year and go even a little above that, and direct roughly $1 billion back into the economy through construction, transportation, and economic development. We will make much needed investments in our workforce, the lifeblood of any organization. This is especially important to me and my colleagues in the Senate, because while our economy will recover and while our business community will rebound, while our state's fiscal health will remain secure, the economic boom headed our way will pass by far too many of our neighbors unless we act now. Trickle-down economics simply does not work. The pandemic exposed deep fault lines in the foundations of our society that have been ignored for far too long. Income inequality not only exists, it reached disturbing levels. Over the last 40 years, net worker productivity has increased over 70%, while worker pay has stagnated. Here in Delaware, 1 of 6 children lives in poverty, and 1 in 5 is unsure where their next meal will come from. Inequity in our public education system not only exists, it is failing students of color, particularly the 12,000 children from the city of Wilmington, at an astonishing rate, with 74% failing to meet standards in English and 84% failing to meet standards in math. Systemic racism not only exists, it has helped to increase Delaware's jail population by over 670% over the last 40 years, with Black people now making up nearly 60% of our total incarceration population. Health disparities not only exist, they are leaving Delaware's growing senior population more and more vulnerable by the year. Nearly 2 in 5 Delaware residents live in an area with a shortage of primary care doctors. Delaware is ranked 45th in the nation for number of dentists per capita, and yet health insurance premiums in Delaware are among the highest in the nation. We can and we must do more to address these real and pervasive issues in our state by pursuing policies that will strengthen our economy and chart a path of recovery and progress for Delaware's working families. Our essential workers stepped up in heroic fashion as we battled the greatest public health crisis of our lifetimes. Now they need us to step up for them as they work to build a better life in the post-pandemic economy. They deserve to earn enough money to put food on the table and keep a roof over their heads. They certainly deserve to earn what workers in New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Virginia earn. After all, they have sacrificed over the last year and they deserve to earn $15 an hour by 2025. Senate Bill 15 is the product of a tremendous amount of compromise and outreach by Senator Jack Walsh, who made adjustments due to direct input from the business community. This measure will deliver on that promise. Our essential workers deserve to never again face the impossible choice of showing up to work or losing their paycheck to care for a newborn or sick loved one. Senate Bill 1 will provide workers with 12 weeks of paid family and medical leave so they never again have to choose between their job and some of the most basic challenges we all face as human beings. I know Senator McBride has been reaching out and working diligently with a lot of you, as Mike pointed out earlier. Our essential workers deserve to know our courts and our laws will be used to protect them from harm, not force them into the streets. Senate Bill 101 will help families stay in their homes while they face temporary financial instability, while Senate Bill 90 will end the housing discrimination that Delaware's lowest wage earners, vulnerable seniors, and people with disabilities face every day. Our essential workers deserve to know their healthcare system cares more about their health than about their insurance reimbursement value. Senate Bill 120 will require higher levels of investment in primary care doctors, but put reasonable limits on price increases that are driving up consumer costs and incentivize our healthcare industry to focus on healthy outcomes. Our essential workers deserve to know their state is directing education funding to the students who need help the most. This year, we passed legislation to increase classroom-based support for our lowest income students, English learners, and students with disabilities. And we are continuing to push for more wraparound services and better teacher recruitment at our highest poverty schools. Education does not stop at the 12th grade, and our efforts to develop the workforce of tomorrow cannot stop at grade school. This year, we passed legislation to strengthen Delaware's workforce, particularly those hit hardest by the pandemic, by helping hundreds of students and working adults obtain the skills they need for in-demand, good-paying jobs. Senate Bill 12, which Mike referred to earlier, will provide financial assistance to hundreds of working-class adults seeking skills training at Delaware Technical and Community College and the University of Delaware, while Senate Bill 95 will help hundreds of local high school graduates earn a bachelor's degree at Delaware State University and enter the workforce debt-free. When they enter the workforce debt-free, that means they can consume more products that our businesses make. Make no mistake, these are economic development policies, because you and I know very well that companies look at a handful of metrics when deciding where to grow. They look at a state's tax burden. We're ranked in the top 15 most business-friendly states by both the Tax Foundation and USA Today. But the number one thing businesses look at when deciding where to move is a state's quality of life. Things like affordable housing, quality schools, the availability of medical services. We cannot afford to lose any more ground on these issues as we come out of this pandemic. But more important, our neighborhoods, our communities, our businesses cannot afford these issues to go unaddressed one more year. The enduring images of this pandemic will be the hourly wage worker who showed up for shift after shift to keep our grocery stores shelves stocked, the delivery driver who ensured our medications and other necessities arrived on time, and the caretakers and home healthcare workers who put themselves in harm's way to keep our loved ones safe and healthy. We owe them more than our gratitude. We owe them dignity. We owe them respect. We owe them a path to prosperity. With these measures I've outlined today, I believe Delaware can be a better place to live, work, raise a family, and run a business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your remarks. Speaker.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Excuse me. I think it goes without saying that last year was the absolute worst year any of us have ever seen in just about every aspect of life. But most definitely in terms of businesses like those of you here today being represented by the state chamber. As one of the three branches of government, we were in uncharted territory and quite unsure of what we could do legally. We ran several bills in January, then recessed for the JFC process in February. We were scheduled to resume session on March 17th, but the governor issued a state of emergency the day before, effectively shutting us down. Unlike every business in this state, we had trouble adapting to the new norm of an executive order. We're bound by the Constitution, and we weren't sure we could legally conduct business virtually like everyone else. It took a month of several attorneys, House and Senate, Democrat and Republican, to figure out that Mason's rules provided the protection we needed to do virtual sessions. And we had a learning curve, but we were able to pass some meaningful legislation along with the budget while postponing less important legislation. As Speaker, and I'm sure Senator Sokola will agree with me, this has been the most trying time of our political career. Some businesses were able to thrive virtually, others were able to stay afloat, and some did not survive. But virtual politics is an unmitigated problem in my view. To be successful in politics, you need to be able to communicate with others, look them in the eye, whether it's a scheduled meeting or a 2-minute chat in the hallway. That doesn't happen virtually, and I'm so happy to be moving session back into the building and restoring some sense of normalcy to the January through June political process. We have a significant list of accomplishments so far this year on many big priorities touching every key policy area. We've moved bills on criminal justice reform, voting rights, gun safety, environmental protections, affordable health care, economic empowerment, and education. A few big bills get a lot of the attention and stir a lot of controversy, but alongside those bills is a list of real meaningful legislation we have worked this year that hasn't grabbed the headlines. We have passed the Clean Water for Delaware Act, which invests $50 million in clean water projects that will rebuild our drinking water infrastructure and all things water related. We passed the Drinking Water Protection Act, which will enforce limits of dangerous substances known as forever chemicals. And we have also passed a law increasing Delaware's renewable portfolio standard to reach 40% renewable energy by 2035. We passed a bill that makes Delaware's earned income tax credit refundable, providing low-income individuals financial relief on their income taxes. We passed the Telehealth Access Preservation Modernization Act, permanently codifying telemedicine as an option for Delaware's healthcare. We've also passed legislation establishing automatic voter registration and consolidating our state and federal primaries, which would move Delaware state primary from the latest in the nation to the spring. We also have legislation to institute same-day voter registration and allowing for no excuse absentee voting. Most significantly for businesses, we passed numerous COVID-related bills, including legislation providing restaurant relief, to-go alcohol sales, and outdoor dining, suspending teacher evaluations during the pandemic, and exempting unemployment benefits from personal income tax. In June, the number one focus is always the budget. Thankfully, this process has gone very smoothly. We usually schedule up to 2 weeks for budget markup, but this year, Representative Carson and Senate Party were able to complete markup at just over 2 days. It's amazing what can be done when you have extra money available. If you look at what was funded by the Joint Finance Committee, you have a clue as to some of the things we're going to be voting on this month. That list of bill includes the refundable EITC, it's pending in the Senate, the primary care provider loan repayment, expanding SEED and DSU Inspire scholarships, helping more Delaware students get an education, improving our future workforce, the minimum wage bill, and the recreational marijuana bill. The funding for all of these bills is contingent on passing the House and Senate and signed by the governor, but the funding is in place. A lot of these bills have a good amount of support, and many of them have passed out of committee. When the sponsors tell me they have the votes to pass, I try to honor their requests and put the bill on the agenda. This year with COVID, we've been busier and done more bills in probably any first year of a 2-year session that I can remember. Our virtual committee meetings have become routine and are running as smoothly as we could possibly have hoped for. In fact, it's clear that more members of the public are attending and participating in our committee meetings than ever before. And I'm extremely proud of how we've continued to do business in the pandemic. And today we are taking another step to normalcy by allowing members of the public back in the Legislative Hall, as many people as we can safely accommodate in House and Senate galleries. And that's just the start. Hopefully we can improve and expand on that. A lot of work has gone into trying to reopen, and I'd like to take a minute to personally thank my Chief of Staff, Sean Finnegan, Chief Clerk Rich Puffer, our Jack of all trades, Sarah Wooten, and the key staff members on the Senate side, and finally the DTI staff that made it all come together. And I have enjoyed working with Dave Sokola as my COVID partner in his first year as Pro Tem. And he was a little bit modest when he was talking about the vaccination program. I think he spends every weekend volunteering at different vaccination clinics and helping to get these vaccinations out to the public. But I have thoroughly enjoyed my time with Dave. This whole time I've said that we would take things one month at a time, and that we would do as much as we can to return to normal as quickly as the science says we can safely do so. And I think we've done just that. We've had a gradual, steady reopening process that has gone pretty smoothly so far, and I think we can be proud of that. So I want to thank you very much for letting me speak today to you, and I have to say that I actually have missed you guys.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Pete. David, let me go back to workforce training, workforce development. You and I have had conversations on the Workforce Development Board, and I know that Secretary Hubbard is looking at ways in which to update and maybe modernize the Workforce Development Board. You mentioned, and I know the business community, with no exceptions, is appreciative of the efforts that the governor and the General Assembly have made to replenish the unemployment insurance trust fund. Critically important, because as businesses start to heal, and we're kind of all over the map, right? We have some businesses that didn't take their foot off the gas, like construction and things like that during the pandemic, but then others that were severely damaged. Obviously hospitality, restaurants, the arts, and entertainment, to name a few. Elevate, which is Senate Bill 166, and I'm not trying to catch you flat-footed, but that's something that we think is really important. We think kind of is an extension of Forward Delaware, the program that was stood up during the pandemic to kind of look at folks, hit them at their, solve for their pain points, get them into 5-day-a-week, 8-hour-a-day training, accelerate the time with which they could be upskilled, because we've got this big skills mismatch. What do you think about Senate Bill 166? Or if you're not prepared to speak about that in particular, just workforce training as a priority for the Senate, please.
So there's a number of tools that we're trying to put in the box. Senator Poor's Senate Bill 12, obviously Pettyjohn's FAST Act, and it's sometimes hard to keep them all straight. I know that, for instance, the change that Senator Poore was looking forward to was to allow people get treated the same way as a recent high school graduate, because some people were just suddenly left without work and looking at a possibility of that work never coming back. Any way that we can expedite the process of getting a credential, doesn't have to be a bachelor's, doesn't have to be a BA, a BS, it can be a credential of some sort. And by the way, when I got laid off from DuPont after 34 years, I went and got a credential at the University of Delaware for senior physical fitness. You can teach an old dog some new tricks sometimes, and we just have to, we are always looking for new ideas. Some of the good new ideas come from your members, and we want to respond to those, and we want to make it, I think the most important thing though is to identify if it's a skill that is actually needed. So if we're going to be putting resources into training people, we want them to have something at the other end of the training. And some of these credentials only take a number of weeks, some of them take a number of months, and some of them take a number of years. But what we have to do is identify skill sets that are needed, people who can fit that, and then a way to source it, a way to fund it that's fair and appropriate. Hopefully we'll get people with a new skill set where they'll be able to use it for quite some time and use it with a reasonable amount of pay.
Appreciate that. Pete, your thoughts on workforce training and development. I mean, as we think of your district, lots of restaurants, lots of hospitality, lots of small boutique retail consumer facing businesses that were there may not have been a district in the state, or maybe a few others that were disproportionately hit as hard as perhaps yours. And the workforce training and development piece is kind of maybe a double-edged sword. As people exit some industries and they upskill and they go work in tech, healthcare, the building trades, places where we're seeing, we have 10,000 people in this country that retire every single day, and that's been a phenomenon that started about 8-9 years ago, and it's going to continue to 2027 as the baby boom generation retires. Your thoughts about workforce development and training, please.
Well, you're right. I mean, my area has been hit particularly hard, considering that a lot of the people in my area work in businesses that are only open for 5-6 months out of the year, and they base their yearly income on that. I think what one of the results of the pandemic is going to be a complete reboot of the job market. I think there's going to be a lot of career changes from people that, for whatever reason, COVID, the business went out of business or whatever, they got laid off. They can't go back to work, that particular work. I think they're going to be going into different areas of the market. And I think that, like Dave was talking about, I think we have to do everything we can to make sure that we have the services provided and that we help them get the training and whatever they need to be successful in a new job or a new occupation. So anything we can do to help, and Dave's exactly right. Most of these ideas come from people with a business background, like your audience here today. We're open, we'll listen to anything out there. And if it's doable, we'll try to get it done.
So Pete, let me stay with you for a second and ask David to respond to this himself afterwards. Recreational marijuana is on the agenda this week.
Yes, it is.
To summarize chamber member views, there's a lot of worry. We've had a lot of different sessions about this, and I've intentionally tried to, the pun here is intended, to separate smoke from fire, to try to, we asked some people from Washington State, for example, from my colleague from Washington State, where this has been policy for 10 years. What's been the experience? Does Boeing still have a challenge recruiting people? What about smaller employers? Have there been workplace accidents? We asked that question of people from Colorado. So we're trying to provide as much intellectual rigor to this as we possibly can, and certainly not swing at ghosts or set up false narratives. But I will tell you this: if I had to summarize the views, members are worried. They want to. They want to maintain their own policies, notwithstanding state law. They want to maintain their own policy because, for example, we have a number of companies that do contract work, and with agencies and departments of both the federal and state government, and they have zero tolerance policies in place, and they want to be able to make sure that those are honored. They worry about recruitment. There are people there are populations where it's already tough to get people through the pipeline. And we worry that, perhaps this is just further dampening the pool of eligibles, especially as businesses go through this awareness. And we hope it's not just soaring rhetoric. We hope that there's realities. Senator Sokola referred to this earlier about, our being a more inclusive and diverse workforce. And so there's a lot of issues. I mean, we think of these things in isolation, but they're all interrelated. But if you could talk to us about, your thoughts about this week, Thursday, that vote, and what are your thoughts about recreational marijuana? And then we'll ask Senator Sokola to comment too.
So recreational marijuana bill is on the agenda for Thursday. I have tried to stay out of this discussion. I know where I am and where I'm going to be. I had that conversation with the sponsor of the bill. I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't know at this point. I don't even know what the required vote count is going to be, because there's amendments on it. There are some things in the bill that's going to drive it to a 3/4 votes. I think there's going to be an amendment to drive it to take that part out so that he doesn't need 31 votes to pass it. I think it's in peril if it goes to 31 votes. So I really can't even give you, and this goes back to what I was saying about the communication. We have not been in the building to have these communications. It's that little 2-minute chat in the hallway where you get the honest answer from somebody about where you feel on a bill and everything like that type of stuff. I have no sense of whether or not this bill will pass. I do have my concerns, and my concerns echo a lot of your concerns. I do believe that it will cause a problem in the job market, in the labor side of it. I mean, anybody who has people or employees that run equipment or drive or do anything like that for as part of their job, I think is going to cause a problem. We're not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of places, a lot of states that have already done this. And I think if you go out to those different states and talk to them, you'll get the answers you need instead of reading it out of a report that might be one-sided one way or the other. So I have my concerns, but I've promised the sponsor I wouldn't try to do anything I wouldn't use a bully pulpit to do anything about it. So I told him if he gets the votes, let me know, we'll put the bill on the floor. And he is convinced that he has the votes. And so the bill is on the floor for Thursday.
Appreciate that. Senator, your thoughts about this topic?
Yeah, Pete raises some really important questions about it. And I think it's important to recognize that there are some nuances that make this a challenge. I have talked to legislators in Washington and Colorado, and you know, it's certainly something that there were unanticipated things that occurred. Some of them were very good, and some of them did cause for some concern. The idea about somebody working for a company with a zero tolerance policy, you know, right now, there are cough medicines, there are prescription drugs, there are things that that they use field testing to determine if somebody is not fit for working at the time, and that's apparently what has been working reasonably well in Washington state for employers to be able to ensure that they have a safe workplace. One of my biggest problems with marijuana law is there's so much data about disproportionate enforcement, and a lot of it being skewed by race, and that's something that leaves me with a whole lot of heartburn that we've had things illegal for a long time, and it's not enforced uniformly. And so I think that this is something that is coming in a lot of states. We're learning a lot from other states, and I think we have the responsibility, if it is enacted, to monitor it carefully and to consider best practices as we move forward. There are other things that are, you know, gradually moved in one state after one of them. Delaware's graduated license law. Boy, you wouldn't have believed all the opposition we got from that before we passed it, and we've changed it. I bet at least a half a dozen times in the 25 years since it was enacted. We're going to have to monitor this carefully if it's passed, and make sure that that anything that was unforeseen is addressed when it happens.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Can I jump back in here for a minute?
Yes.
I think there are some good aspects to marijuana. I think, you know, the medical marijuana side of it, I've supported and sponsored most of the bills, or been a co-prime sponsor on all the bills. We decriminalized the use of marijuana, so made it so it's not a criminal offense anymore. Made it a civil offense with a civil fine. So I'm not like, you know, 100% against the use of marijuana, but I do have my concerns on this side of it. You know, I mean, there have been some concerns in the past, not so much now, but as Dave said about the uneven enforcement of the bill, but the law, but that shouldn't even be an issue at this point in time. The only thing I'll say, and most of us we grew up through that era when drugs were prevalent, and especially marijuana, but it's what we're talking about here isn't the marijuana of the days when we grew up in. This is much more intense and much more powerful. And I think, as Dave said, the only way this is going to work is if we have really tight controls and really tight oversight on the implementation of the law. So
I appreciate that.
we know it's coming at some point in time. If it's this year, fine. If it's, you know, whenever it happens, it's going to be out there.
I appreciate that. you both raise a number of good points. There is no test for impairment, and that is a challenge, because even if there was a test, and if you got data, what would the data tell you? It's not like a breathalyzer where if you're 5'1" and 105 pounds, or you're 6'1" and 205 pounds, 0.08 is 0.08. So it's a challenge. I've shared that with the the House sponsor, and have had good conversations with him, and so I appreciate the deliberative nature of all this. Let's pivot to minimum wage for a minute. Senator, we'll start with you first, and then we'll go to the speaker, and then we'll wrap up. This is one where, and I know from the comments that you've made at the Workforce Development Board, and your work in education and training, and I hope everyone understands, our heart is all in, I think our hearts are all in the same place. We all want people to have higher skill sets and earn progressively more money if that's part of their own personal goals, because we do have employers with really great opportunities out there in the trades, in technology, in healthcare, hospitality, other industry verticals that are really, really important to the future of the state. And you are correct. Not all of this requires a baccalaureate degree. There are stackable credentials. There are ways in which people can get to an end game. We worry, though, that for a lot of our small businesses that sell commodities, and where they don't have a lot of price flexibility, that this just ushers in more automation, and the very people who are intending to help are harmed by step increases to the wage, because it's a decision then for a business of a person versus automation. And when you, as I shared earlier, these things don't happen in isolation. So then you add in, can you get people through screening processes? And so the very folks you want to help sometimes are the ones that perhaps are lost further. And anyway, your thoughts about the minimum wage, and where all this lands.
So I've had the privilege of serving now for 31 years, and I've heard concerns every time we had a minimum wage bill. And it turns out, if you look back at actual data, the horror stories just were not realized when we had them. In fact, I think it was the last one during Markell's term. There were 2 years, like 2014, 2015, and I remember distinctly hearing that, we were going to lose employment, there was going to be more automation. Yet what happened was those 2 years was the two biggest growth in jobs years in the state's history up to that point. Now we're going to have a bigger year this year because we were way down, and we're just going to have more jobs for kind of an outlier reason. But the people who make more at the bottom put all of that money back into the local economy. They're barely getting by before. They're now getting by a little bit better, so they can go to the coffee shop or the donut shop or the hardware store to fix something that otherwise would go broken for a longer period of time. They're going to be able to do a little bit more with their life and in their community. That's been the experience. That seems to be the experience in the states that went ahead of us on minimum wage, and the ones that went well ahead of us before the pandemic hit. And I don't believe that we're getting a quicker bounce back than New Jersey or Maryland, who were already ahead of us, and who, with the increase on January 1, will still be well ahead of us. So. We can look at what's happened here, and we can look at what's happened elsewhere, and recognize that, there are things that we need to monitor. We do want to just not completely dismiss those things, but I've heard them so many times and they've never been realized. So I think it's the right thing to do. I think this is the right time to do it. And I would hope that, that we could move forward together on it.
Speaker,
we had more testimony this time from the business community in support of increasing the minimum wage that I've ever heard. I'm not on that committee, but I tuned in. That's the one advantage to Zoom is you can, wherever you are, just tune in. And I was stunned. And we had business people saying, it's about time. I pay my people more than this, and I'm tired of competing with people who don't, treat their employees with the dignity they deserve. And, that was some interesting testimony that we heard both in the hearing and people coming to me before the hearing and since the hearing, saying things like that. Never heard before in previous minimum wage increase bills, but this time we did.
Pete, your thoughts on this? I mean, I know that you have a lot of small businesses, boutique businesses, et cetera, in your district. Any thoughts on this topic? Just a couple of quick minutes here.
My district is 100% small business, tourism. I'll be honest with you, the opposition to the minimum wage bill is almost a moot point at this time. I mean, we have people down here that are making a lot more than $15 right now that, you can talk to these business owners and they'll tell you the horror stories one right after the other because of the labor shortage. One guy, went to Louis, and Louis said, who's closed on Thursday night now. And I texted him and said, what's going on? And he said, I don't have staff. I can't stay open. And he said, I had just lost my guy that was going to be working Thursday night. He said he was making $13.50 an hour here. He took a job out on the highway for $16. And within 2 days, he left that job, went to another job for $19.50 on the highway. So the minimum wage right now issue, I think it's a little bit of a mute issue. I'm real curious, and I don't know that they've ever done studies on this type of thing at all, but what's going to happen when people do start coming back to work? What's going to happen when the kids get their visas to come across from Europe to work here at the beach and everything, and we have enough workers? What are they going to do with the wages at that point in time? This $19, where's it going? Is it going back down to minimum wage, or I don't know how that works. I really don't know. The one thing I do am concerned about, and I'm going to vote for the bill, but the one concern I do have is with nonprofits. By raising the minimum wage on some of the nonprofits that don't have a product that they can sell or raise the price on, these service-oriented nonprofits. And a lot of these nonprofits that have contracts with the state that have already been negotiated on a certain salary that are 2 and 3 year long contracts. The state's going to have to step in and help them out as well. So I think the fiscal note that's sitting there for the state, I think, is the minimal amount that is going to be to the cost of the state. So, but it's something it's around. It's been beat to death. We did raise the minimum wage 2 years ago or 3 years ago now. But it's just, I don't know that the argument is going to be there against it this time at all.
Appreciate it. All right. You both have been very generous with your remarks and your time. I'll give you, it's 10:30 and I want to be mindful of your time and everybody else's. But David, any final words? And then Pete, any last words?
Just thank you for the opportunity, and I really appreciate the input your business community does give me on a regular basis. Never ordered out more in my life. And it actually is so convenient that I'll bet I continue doing it some. But it's certainly a privilege working with you. And I want to just say how much I enjoy working with Pete and Val over in the House, and I look forward to a productive June. So.
Pete?
Yeah, like Dave just said, we've eaten out more trying to put money back into the economy. We've tipped higher, much higher than we ever have before. And I was always a good tipper, and now I've just become that much more. Because I was fortunate to be getting a paycheck, and a lot of these people were struggling to make payroll, struggling to make ends meet and keep the doors open. So I was trying to do my part and help that. One of the best things we were able to do for our businesses down here was the outside seating. The outside seating and the to-go alcohol with the takeout. We were able to get that thing put in place through the governor's executive order. And I know it's controversial with the businesses and about this executive order, but it is a way of getting things done quickly through an executive order. He can do that in 15 minutes where it takes us weeks to pass a bill. What we have done so far already is we have taken the executive order, we have put it in statute about the outside seating and to-go alcohol. It had a sunset provision. We went back this year and we took away the sunset provision and extended it another year. And then next year, I'm going to try to come back and make it permanent. So there are some good things that have come out of the COVID restriction and the quarantine and all the things that we had to put up with. And I will say this to the business community that's listening here, you know, it has been a rough year and a half. And I know that. We all know that. And we're here. We can do a lot of different things. We have a lot of money coming in that will be coming in under the Recovery Act money. And if there's any way we can help, we will definitely try to do it. Anything we can do to help you guys make it through another day is what we need to do.
Appreciate it both. Well, let me thank you both again for your time this morning. Thank you for all your work. Terrific being with you this morning, and I appreciate the time that you and your staff dedicate to getting ready for all this. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good luck over the next 9-10 days, and we look forward to speaking with you.
We'll get through it.
Thank you. All right, this concludes our session, everybody. Thanks to all of the almost 200 attendees, and everybody have a good day. Thank you.